My name is Lily. I am the mother of two boys. My oldest son is Paxton, he's 11, and my younger son is Bryson, and he is forever 5. So in 2022, he was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, but I'm going to back up a little bit just to kind of paint the picture. So late November of 2022, he came home from daycare, and at the time he was 2.5, and he came home from daycare, and I was changing his diaper, and I noticed that one of his testicles was swollen. And I said to my husband, this doesn't look normal. What should we do? And he's like, and so I called my mother-in-law, who is an RN, and she was like, you need to take him in immediately in case, it's I don't know what it's called when they twist, a torsion. I don't know if that sounds right. Anyways, she thought they were twisted, which is a medical emergency. So we took him in and they examined him. They didn't do any blood work. They did do an ultrasound, and they diagnosed it as a hydrocele, just saying that basically he, for whatever reason, there was something that hadn't finished developing in the womb, and but he said it would just eventually clear up on its own, and it wasn't anything to worry about, and to follow up with a urologist in a few weeks. 3 weeks is what they said. So fast forward exactly 3 weeks to the day. Bryson comes home from daycare, and he has it doesn't look like a mass. It doesn't look like a giant lump. It just looked like the left side of his abdomen was just kind of like bulging more than the other side. For reference, though, he was a very, 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 very large baby. He had lots of rolls, big old belly. So noticing those kinds of things on him wasn't out of the ordinary. Like, it felt like he had new rolls every day. So we didn't really think anything of it. He had a history of constipation. So we kind of chalked it up to that. And we were like, this was a Friday. We were like, we'll just see how the weekend goes and take it from there. And I thought back, and I was like, oh yeah, it's been 3 weeks. We need to make an appointment with a urologist. I'll call on Monday. Then maybe we can address this too if it's, still there. So fast forward to Monday. He had pooped all weekend, wasn't constipated, but the bulging had gotten bigger in a matter of 3 days. Noticeably bigger at this point. It wasn't super hard to the touch. I could still push it. But it was noticeable. I mean, it was definitely noticeable. It definitely felt different than the other side. There was clearly something there. And so my husband had already left for work. So I took a video and I sent it to him, and I said, this looks bigger. I don't think he's constipated. He's due for a follow-up with the urologist. Would it hurt to just take him into his pediatrician and say, hey, we're not really concerned about the testicle anymore. They told us to follow up, so that's what we're doing. But really, we'd like to check this out too, because that's new, and that seems more concerning. And so I made an appointment that morning. I dropped him off at daycare. My husband took off work early to go pick him up from daycare and take him to the appointment. And I was at work, and I get a phone call from my husband, and he says, well, they did an x-ray, and they want us to go to the nearest children's emergency room immediately. And I said, why? What did they find on the x-ray? What did they tell you? And he said, they just said that there's something inside of him, a mass of some sort, a cyst. They couldn't tell on the x-ray, but there is definitely something inside of him that's causing that bulge. And I was like, okay. So I left work, super frantic. Um, Long story short, between, leaving work and arranging pickup for Paxton and waiting and whatnot, made it to the hospital, and um, they were still waiting in the waiting room. Like, it had been 4 hours and they were still waiting. So they hadn't gotten back. We hadn't had any answers yet, but I was there, and I was kind of happy that they hadn't done anything, because that meant I would be there to see everything, hear everything, ask the questions, all of that. So they bring him back, and they decide they're going to do a CT, and they were like, "But we have to put him to sleep. Is that okay with you? Are you going to be okay with that?" And I was like, well, yeah, like, I want a clear image. I don't want to have to do this again. So yeah, that's fine. I think she thought that was going to scare me. I mean, at the time it probably did. It's not normal to see your child get put to sleep under anesthesia, but I was so concerned with everything going on and why we were there and the fact that we didn't have answers that I was just like, yes, please do this CT. I want to know what's going on. And in hindsight, after how many times he was put to sleep throughout his entire journey, it just seems like the smallest thing now. But yeah, so they did a CT, and it took a long time. It was like an hour and a half, and it was after hours at the hospital, so there was nobody there. The cafeteria was closed. The hallways were empty. The waiting room was empty. It was dark outside. It was just the two of us. And in the pre-op room, before the CT, they had the whiteboard, and it had his name and the date and who his nurse was and what the procedure was, and then it had a list of like the plan. So sedation, CT, and at the very bottom it said admit to the 7th floor. And I just remember seeing that and thinking, okay, so they're admitting us. What's on the 7th floor? So that hour and a half that he was in a CT machine, I was scouring the internet looking to see like what is on the 7th floor of Children's Hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was looking for anything, a map, a directory, anything that would tell me all the departments and what floors they were on. I could not find a single thing. And so I was like, okay, well, when we get up there and we get off the elevator, like every hospital does, it'll have a sign that says welcome to the whatever ward. But that didn't happen because they took us up staff elevators, and so we came in through the back, and there was no sign. They put us in a room that was tucked away in the corner. Looking back, I feel like that might be the room they put new diagnoses in now, because it's just tucked away like that, and we were never put in that room again. But we get up to the 7th floor, still don't know where we are, get in our room. At this point, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and I walk in the room, and on the bedside table, they have brochures and pamphlets titled My Cancer Journey. And immediately, red flags, like, whoa. And I just remember thinking, okay, well, if there's a mass inside of him, then it's, they don't know if it's cancer or not, but it's probably just safe to put him on the cancer floor until they determine if it's cancerous or not. That's what I was telling myself to kind of calm myself down. I don't know why I didn't ask, just straight up ask, do you think he has cancer? Is that why we're on the cancer floor? I think I was just too scared to know the answer, because I think I already knew the answer and I didn't want to have it confirmed. So I didn't ask anything, and the doctor comes in, who is just the hospital overnight oncologist. Like, not that he's not important or anything, but he's just he doesn't see patients outside, like in the clinic. He doesn't follow them. He just kind of treats them when they're admitted. So it wasn't like Bryson's oncologist. It was just the one that was rounding that night. And he came to talk to us, and he pulls up a chair next to us. Oh, it's a bedside. And he says, tell me, so he says, we have the results of the CT, and there's definitely some sort of mass on his left adrenal gland and kidney. And he says, at this point, we're very emotional. And he could definitely tell. And he was like, tell me what comes to your mind when you hear the word cancer. Or no, I'm sorry. He was like, tell me what comes to your mind when you hear the word tumor or mass. And I was like, well, cancer. Duh. And he was like, yep, that's understandable. And he's like, cancer is an umbrella term that, covers a whole bunch of different types of cancers and diseases. And, not all of them are fatal. And if that's what this is, if this is that, then we just take it from there and we, follow the protocol. And at the time, all of this went over my head. I wasn't really even listening. I was just like, oh my God, this is real life. This is happening. Like, I'm not going to go to work tomorrow. So we made the phone calls to like my parents and his parents, and we were all just kind of, the devastation hadn't hit yet. I mean, we were still hoping it wasn't cancer. We were still trying to process everything that had happened in that last 24 hours and what the future was going to look like. Yeah. So we went to bed, and the next morning I called his daycare and I said, well, he will not be in today. They admitted him to the hospital because they think he might have cancer. And just saying that out loud on the phone, I completely broke down, because that was the first time I had actually said the words out loud and heard myself say that and kind of realized what I was saying and what that actually meant. And then I texted my boss and said, I'm not going to make it in today. Same thing. We're in the hospital. They think you might have cancer. So after that, it was all kind of a blur. I just know that they got him in for surgery as soon as they possibly could to remove this mass. Knowing what I know now, that's not standard protocol for neuroblastoma. They should have taken a biopsy of it before just deciding to remove it. And I didn't know that at the time, though. So they removed the whole tumor. And at the time, I thought that was great. We're getting it out of his body. Like, what? Yeah, that's fabulous. Until the tumor ruptured during surgery. And, cells are so tiny, you can't see where they go. And so now, because the tumor had ruptured during surgery, it had now become considered metastatic. And so it was stage 4, high risk. And they did not, when they brought us back to see him after the surgery, they did not prepare us for what that was going to look like. He was in the ICU, first of all. We had not known that. He was not awake yet. He was not wearing any clothing, and so all his extremely large scar was exposed. The leads were all exposed. His port, he had an epidural, a breathing tube. Like, he had so many tubes and wires and a giant scar, and it was very jarring to walk into not prepared. And I just ran over to his bed and I just hugged him, and I grabbed his hand and I just stroked his face, and I was so glad to just be back with him again. And we only stayed in the PICU because it was such a major surgery. They wanted to make sure that he was okay to go back up to the 7th floor, so it wasn't necessarily a critical situation. It was more of a we need to make sure you're stable after this massive surgery. Um, so we got back up to our room, I think, the next day. And Bryson's oncologist came in. This was the first time we had ever met him. And he introduced himself and again pulled up a chair and came and sat next to us. And he said, so the pathology on his tumor does not look like Wilms' tumor. In the beginning, they thought it was Wilms' tumor, which is a different pediatric cancer that is a kidney cancer. It grows on the kidney, hence why they thought it was Wilms, because that's where his was growing. And so when they told us that night that we got admitted, when the doctor was showing us the CT and talking about what cancer means, he said, looking at the CT with us, it looks like a Wilms tumor. And he never said the word cancer. And so I just thought, okay, sweet, it's just a tumor. It must be benign, because we're just gonna, they know what it is, so we're just gonna take it out, I guess. Sweet. So then, yeah, fast forward to when his oncologist came in and sat down next to us, and he said, it's not, the pathology is not staining for Wilms' tumor. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good, right? We're in the clear, right? Like, he doesn't have what we thought he had. The tumor's out. We're good, right? And he said, well, it's actually staining for neuroblastoma. And at the time, I had no idea what that was. Again, he did not say the word cancer, so I had no idea that my child had cancer still. And he gave me like the roadmap and said, this is everything we're going to do. And, and I was like, okay, sweet. Like, you know what we're doing. This is great. We're just going to follow these steps and cool. I have never wished so badly that I would have done more research in the beginning. I was too afraid to do it. I didn't want to see things that I couldn't unsee. I didn't want to see statistics. I didn't want to face the reality of it. And the doctor had told me, stay off of Google, because everything you read will be the worst of the worst. And he said, that's not always how this goes, though. So that's why, don't go down the rabbit hole on the internet about this. And I was like, okay. So I didn't look anything up. I didn't look into other hospitals, second opinions, other doctors, nothing. I didn't look up anything. And to this day, that is my biggest regret. Eventually, I think it was by like cycle 2 or 3 of chemo, we learned about MSK in New York City. And we reached out to them for a second opinion. And our first mistake was telling Bryson's oncologist that we were seeking a second opinion from there. Because immediately after we said that to him, he said, oh no, you don't want to go there. Like, they're not going to do anything different. Travel's expensive. It'll be a lot on you guys. Like, trust me, you don't want to do that. And we were like, okay. We still had the second opinion consult with him. And Dr. Modak is who it was at MSK. And he said, I don't think it's necessary for you guys to come out here and get treatment. He's like, I can oversee his care from New York, and you guys can do the MSK approach at home. And so we thought that was like the best of both worlds. We don't have to travel, and we get the best treatment. Bryson's oncologist was not fond of that idea. He never expressed that to me, but I could tell. After that, we did not seek any more opinions. I wish we would have. I wish we would have gone to CHOP. I wish we would have gone to Dana-Farber. I wish we would have gone to CHLA. Like, there's so many other places that we could have gone. And I so badly wished we would have. But that's not what we did. And I can't beat myself up about that. But, yeah, he said it's, staining for neuroblastoma. And I said, okay, so what do we do? And he showed me the roadmap, and he was like, we're going to send you home so that he can recover from surgery, and we'll tell you when you have to come back. And we were like, okay. Still had not said anything about cancer. The roadmap he had given us listed out the medications he was going to be getting, all the chemotherapies, but it did not say that it was chemotherapy. It just said the name of the medication, so I still had no idea. Eventually I did find out after just kind of looking up these medications and seeing like what the side effects were and what to expect. And that was really hard to accept. And it was really hard to forgive them. In fact, I don't know if I have forgiven them yet for never actually saying your kid has cancer. I think it's just such common lingo for them because that's what their job is. They do it every day, that they don't think to dumb it down for parents, but that's what we need. We need it to be dumbed down. We need to understand what we're getting ourselves into, and I would rather them be as blunt as possible and completely break my heart than sugarcoat anything and get my hopes up. So we were sent home to recover from surgery. We came back in 3 weeks to start chemo, and have a baseline scan before that. And again, I did not know that this was not standard protocol. Normally they would start chemotherapy immediately to shrink the tumor so that when they do surgery to remove it, it's as small as possible and hopefully detached from anything it was next to or like, growing into. But they didn't do that. They removed it right away, so then he had to recover because it was a major surgery, which put a delay on starting treatment. Again, terrible call on their part. He should have started chemo immediately. There should not have been any waiting. And so part of me thinks that maybe that was why. I mean, I question everything. I'll always question everything. And then, yeah, we did the MSK approach, but it was such a blur in the beginning. Like, you meet everybody and you have no idea who they are. They come in, they have a business card, and they're like, this is what I do. Goodbye. Social workers, case managers, surgeons, the wound team, the ICU team, the respiratory team, the surgical team, the GI team, like any team that you could think of in a hospital was involved because cancer involves your whole body and it affects your whole body. Even if your entire body does not have cancer in it, the medications you receive, the chemotherapy will affect all of your organs. So that's why they're all involved, and you learn very quickly. But I just really wish there would have been more education in the beginning. I felt like we were blindsided. He was diagnosed around Christmas, so part of me thinks that it was a holiday. People were just kind of, I don't know, minds were elsewhere. I have no idea. But I really think that they failed him. So, my biggest piece of advice to new families: no matter what kind of cancer your kid has, no matter how good the outcome may look, please get a second opinion. It could save their life. I learned the hard way that you cannot always trust the doctors, the people that you should be able to trust the most. And I learned very quickly that a lot of it is on you as the parent to do the research, to look for clinical trials, to network with other parents. It's a lot for the parent, but it is something you have to do. You cannot just rely on the doctors. And it's a cancer, pediatric cancer is so aggressive that time is of the essence. You don't have time to wait for a second opinion, next month or after this first cycle of chemo or things like that. Like it needs to happen immediately. And I stress that for every pediatric cancer. Not just, solid tumors, blood cancer, brain cancer, everything. It doesn't hurt to get a second opinion because you don't know what's out there. You don't know what kind of doctors you'll meet. You may come across like one of the best ones in the most unexpected way, and it could totally change your family's life. That is my biggest piece of advice. And I really wished I had joined the Facebook groups in the beginning. I didn't, because I didn't want to see people's kids dying all the time. It would have been really discouraging. But I so badly wish I would have done that, not because I would have learned about neuroblastoma, but because I would have had the opportunity to connect with other parents who were going through the exact same thing that we were going through. When he was first diagnosed, we were led to believe that this was so rare that we weren't going to find anybody else that was going through what we're going through. And so we felt like we were truly in the dark. And we had no idea that there was a pediatric cancer community. We had no idea that there were Facebook groups of other parents supporting each other and supporting their kids and giving information and talking about clinical trials and medications that they've used that help them, and all the tips and tricks for syringes and port accessing and literally anything you could think of. I wish I hadn't been so naive, and I wish I hadn't been so scared. It's hard not to be scared when your child gets diagnosed with cancer, but you have to learn how to become super mom. You have to just put everything else on the back burner, including your emotions and your fears, and you just put your blinders on and you are on autopilot and you just go until you can't anymore. I mean, you go to the ends of the earth to cure your child, and that's what you will do. And please do not let your fear stop you, because that is the biggest thing your kid needs, is an advocate. So that would be my two biggest pieces of advice.